Metroids. They're the face of the Metroid franchise for obvious reasons, so it's only fair that they play a huge role in it. And because of this, there have been tons of variants among its species across the franchise's multiple games. But, have you ever wondered how many Metroids are there? And how do they even relate to each other in terms of their multiple forms and evolutionary stages? Today, we'll be answering both of these questions, discussing their origins and unique abilities. So, without further ado, let's get to it! Metroids were originally created in SR388, and thus this is where most of the species can be found. This is also where the most popular incarnation of these creatures originate from, Metroid larvae. These creatures possess a green translucent membrane with 3 red dots and fangs that are characteristic of Metroids. They are able to move by floating around in the air, and the main skill they're known for is being able to drain energy, which isn't limited to living organisms as depicted by Dread's ending sequence. They are usually deemed as nearly perfect creatures, and there have been multiple attempts over the course of the franchise to turn them into bioweapons by both the Space Pirates and the Federation. They only possess one weak point, and that's their weakness to cold. Metroids were created and developed within warm climates, hence why they're so vulnerable to cold temperatures. Merely sub-zero temperatures are enough to cause them physical harm, hence why the ice beam is so commonly associated with Metroids, given how it's the main way to deal with them. They were originally created by the Chozo in SR388, hence why it makes sense for every other species to derive from this one. However, this is far from everything that the SR388 Metroids have to offer. Given their favorable habitat in SR388, Metroids from this world developed further than the base form, reaching stronger evolutionary stages. But all creatures must start somewhere, and Metroids are no exception. Metroids are oviparous creatures born from the Queen Metroid, which means that they all start off as Metroid eggs. The Metroid egg is green in color, and most of them are covered in a tough, dry substance resembling roots, which affixes the eggs to the ground in an upright position. This is most likely a substance that initially coated the egg that eventually hardened. After the egg comes the infant Metroid. They are quite similar to the Metroid larva, but much smaller in size, and while one might be led to believe that these creatures are harmless, it's actually not that easy to assess. They are capable of draining life energy at this stage, which can be quite harmful, but their strength is quite limited, so they're easy to remove from one's skin, unlike Metroid larva. And after the infant Metroid grows, it'll turn into a Metroid larva, which will later become an Alpha Metroid. When a Metroid larva lives under favorable conditions, it will begin metamorphosis and turn into Alpha Metroids. Alpha Metroids still greatly resemble Metroid larvas, having the same round shape, but their anatomy will greatly diverge from their previous stage. Their fangs will have moved to one of their sides, simulating a leech-like mouth, and their 3 nucleus orbs will have seemingly merged into one. They will begin to grow insect-like legs that, while not that useful in this stage, will eventually become more important as the evolutionary stages progress. And they will now possess a hard green shell that will fully protect the upper part of their membrane. However, this will leave the lower part fully exposed, which makes them vulnerable to enemy attacks. However, they can utilize electricity to surround their membrane in order to protect it, and can also utilize it as a projectile against any potential threats. Additionally, thanks to its newfound mouth, Alpha Metroids can defend themselves with their fangs by tackling opponents, as seen in-game. However, they seem to have lost their life-draining ability from their predecessors, which greatly hinders their ability to defend themselves. Nonetheless, these creatures mark an important point in the Metroid's life cycle, and they set the founding grounds for later stages. On top of that, there's apparently another variant of these Alpha Metroids, which are further mutations of the Alpha Metroids that don't turn into their next stage, but rather simply become a more powerful version of their form, the evolved Alpha Metroids. These creatures are covered in a green moss-like substance while possessing an additional pair of eyes, now colored yellow. They possess the exact same patterns as Alpha Metroids, but are a bit stronger and more chaotic, which fits into their strange nature. Very little is known about this particular stage, but it's most likely a result of failed mutations when transitioning into their next evolutionary stage. On that note, after the Alpha Metroids come the Gamma Metroids. Gamma Metroids follow the newly introduced characteristics and expand upon them even further. The legs have become their means of moving around, but they still resort to flight from time to time. The shell has grown even bigger, up to the point of giving them a tail, and their leech-like mouth has increased in size. In terms of abilities, they can control their electricity to shoot out a beam of energy from their mouths, or they can utilize that same electricity to conduct it through the whole floor. Just like Alpha Metroids, however, they still launch forward with their mouths open while in the air, or alternatively, they'll try to bite their enemies while on the ground, reminiscent of the tackle Alpha Metroids used to perform. And just like Alpha Metroids, Gamma Metroids have an evolved form known as Evolved Gamma Metroids, which while physically changing in color to orange and possessing the same moss-like pattern on their backs as Alpha Metroids, they retain the same abilities as their previous form, while making them even stronger, now glowing orange instead of blue. On top of this, both regular Gamma Metroids and Evolved Gamma Metroids are directly shown capable of creating webs that only other Metroids can go through. This is actually completely unique to this stage, since later down the evolutionary line, no other stage is shown capable of recreating this, which means that Gamma Metroids are responsible for all of the webs in SR388. Next up are Zeta Metroids, which are a drastic change from their former stage. Instead of sharing the same insect-like nature like its predecessor, this stage resembles a theropod dinosaur, bearing reptile-like legs with claws on its ends, a tail, an elongated head, and retaining its leech-like mouth, greatly resembling the Xenomorph from Alien. Its nucleus remains exposed, but these creatures make up for it by being much sturdier than Gamma Metroids. This stage loses its ability to fly, but in return they are able to climb up walls. They move around on all fours, making it harder to shoot its weak point, and their attack patterns greatly vary because of this. They gain the ability to spit fire in a flamethrower-like manner, and they can shoot green balls of acid, the latter of which can bounce off walls if the Metroid were to charge it. And just like every other stage, these creatures also possess an evolved form with a deeper shade of green and orange eyes. Finally, Omega Metroids represent the final stage of regular Metroids, making them the most powerful incarnation by default. They build upon the newly introduced strength from their previous form and add on to it by acquiring even more sturdiness and posing a much bigger threat. On top of this, their membrane now possesses the ability to regenerate, making them even harder to deal with. Additionally, even this form also appears to possess an evolved stage, since the last Omega Metroid you fight in Samus Returns appears to bear a different color scheme similar to the rest of the evolved Metroid forms, making this the definitive stage for most of the species. However, some Metroids are capable of going even further beyond this stage, as seen with the Queen Metroid. Very few Metroids bear the genetic capabilities capable of turning into a queen, and there haven't been any sightings of more than one Queen Metroid existing at a certain point in time, which is coincidentally very reminiscent of how real-life bees work, so it's not that crazy of a concept. The Queen herself is massive compared to the rest of the Metroids, with a body shape akin to a gigantic crocodile. She bears 6 eyes on both of her sides, with an elongated neck and a powerful maw. She also has 2 tubular appendages on her rear end, likely the ovipositors through which she lays her eggs. And as it's expected, despite her nucleus not being fully covered, it's fully protected by the inherent nature of the Queen Metroid, which can only be defeated by directly entering her insides and attacking her from there. As for her attacks, she usually uses her neck to stretch it to defend herself from afar, alongside a deadly fire beam, acid bubbles that can float and linger for a while, and a wind attack that pushes any enemies away from her. As it was stated, only Metroids with the right genes will eventually turn into Queen Metroids. The only Metroid we've seen possessing the Queen Metroid genes is the baby. We never got to see the full extent of the revolutionary line, but from what we got to see, it seems like Metroids with the Queen's genes are identical to their regular counterpart except for their increased size. This fully covers every single evolutionary stage in the Metroid's life cycle. However, there are many other subspecies that derive from Metroid larvae. The first subspecies introduced in any Metroid game were the Zebesian Metroids, which are identical to SR388 Metroids except for their inability to reach further evolutionary stages. Ascani Metroid Prime 3 states that this breed is supposedly more aggressive than regular Metroids, which actually fits into the lore given how in SR388 Metroids have much more reactable patterns compared to the more erratic nature of Metroids in Zebes. However, another subspecies originated in Zebes were the Mocktroids, which are weaker Metroids incapable of draining energy, created by the space pirates in an attempt to replicate Metroids, and as such, being regarded as failures. They lack the nucleus regular Metroids possess, and are much weaker in comparison, lacking the ability of draining life energy Metroids are known for, and thus having to resort to just biting their prey. But space pirates wouldn't give up just yet, since they conducted even more experiments, this time on Tallon 4, affecting Talon Metroids. Just like Zebesian Metroids, these creatures are almost identical to SR388 Metroids, making them more resistant to Phazon, but weaker overall in comparison to SR388 Metroids. These creatures, while limited by their living circumstances, are capable of a branch evolution known as the Metroid Hunter, which shifts their physical appearance into an elongated shape. They now bear two tentacles capable of draining energy, which extends their range. And, uniquely, Talon 4 Metroids actually possess a different infant stage, those being the infant Talon Metroids. These creatures are way less threatening than most Metroids due to their inability to drain life energy. However, despite this, they have shown to possess extremely aggressive behavior. And just like that, infant Metroids possess an even earlier evolutionary stage, that being the Metroid Cocoon. Not much is known about this stage, but according to the logbook data, it's stated to be created by the space pirates to transport young Talon Metroids until they're ready to hatch. This most likely means that while they were synthesized by the space pirates themselves, the cocoons are just a means of transportation, and thus each Metroid form that derives from the infant Talon Metroids still comes directly from the Metroid eggs themselves, the only difference being where they hatched. However, things don't end here for Talon Metroids, since unlike Mocktroids, experiments on Talon 4 Metroid were successful, and they allowed for the creation of Fission Metroids and Phazon Metroids. Fission Metroids are capable of splitting their bodies into two smaller Metroids, and can originate after any successful exposure to Phazon, whereas Phazon Metroids are able to utilize Phazon to their advantage, but can only originate after a great amount of exposure to Phazon. However, the Phazon Metroid is actually one of the few subspecies that can derive from two different subspecies, since it possesses a unique infant stage known as the Miniroid, which are extremely small and frail creatures that are unable to pose any threat. These small Miniroids originate from Metroid eggs infused with Phazon. But as we'll see in a second, this isn't the only way these creatures can be born. These Miniroids will rapidly grow into Phazon Metroids due to the mutagenic properties of Phazon. And just like Talon Metroids, Phazon Metroids are capable of evolving not into one, but two different evolutionary stages, the Metroid Hatcher and the Metroid Hopper. The Metroid Hatcher loses its ability to phase in exchange for receiving 4 tentacles capable of draining energy similar to Metroid Hunters, and a Phazon-like shell. On top of this, they are capable of spawning Phazon Metroids, and they are able to shoot beams of Phazon to protect themselves. This unique ability of spawning Phazon Metroids showcases the Metroid Hatcher's main purpose, breeding. It's not confirmed, but it's rumored that when spawning Phazon Metroids, Miniroids are actually created within the Metroid Hatcher's shell, and are incubated there until they're ready to be released in the form of Phazon Metroids. Completely opposite to Metroid Hatchers, however, the Hopping Metroids are vastly different from their prior incarnation. They now possess 4 legs and a blue exoskeleton resembling a bug, and their main means of attacking are slashing with Phazon and spitting poison. These creatures are also capable of entering hyper mode, and they can shoot some Phazon balls of energy. But hopping Metroids also possess an even more evolved state in the form of Phazon hoppers, which, while not having the word Metroid in the name, they still derive from Metroids. They now gain a purple phasite shell for added protection and can still enter hyper mode, being able to generate shockwaves by hopping around their prey, hence the name. This also leads us into the titular creature of the Metroid Prime series, the Metroid Prime. This creature is the result of a Metroid being exposed to unimaginable amounts of Phazon up to the point of being capable of living inside of the impact crater. This creature closely resembles an arthropod with many legs and an exoskeleton that greatly increases the creature's defensive prowess. Additionally, inside of its core lies a powerful creature, completely invulnerable to every single conventional weapon. Only Phazon shots will be able to get through the creature, but being capable of turning invisible and phasing, this creature is the most durable a Metroid has ever been up to this point. But how does this tie with the previously mentioned stages? Well, while not being directly confirmed, Phazon hoppers and Metroid hoppers bear a striking resemblance to the Metroid Prime, and given the Metroid Prime origins, then it might be possible for the Metroid Prime to be related to those two creatures. But this is just speculation, so we can't really make a concrete connection between the two. What we can easily connect, however, is the Metroid Prime and Doc Samus, which are the same entity, only difference being their capabilities. Doc Samus originated after the Metroid Prime absorbed Samus's Phazon suit and fused with it. This allowed the Metroid Prime to be capable of utilizing Samus's arsenal infected with Phazon, which is extremely dangerous. Phazon beam shots, the ability to phase, creating clones of itself, entering and exiting dark ether at will. Doc Samus is undoubtedly one of Samus's greatest and most dangerous foes, and her capabilities cannot be overlooked. But we aren't done with Tallon Metroids just yet, since when the Space Pirates exported them to Ether, they underwent certain changes that changed their physical appearance. Instead of possessing the green membrane they are known for, the different living conditions in Ether made them fully turn red, which isn't that big of a difference, but it's important to take into account, because these Aetherian Metroids are capable of turning into Dark Tallon Metroids. Dark Tallon Metroids are Aetherian Metroids that got possessed by an ink, rendering them even stronger. Their membrane gets covered by a purple-esque shell and they gain yellow eyes very reminiscent of other ink creatures, and they work just like regular Metroids, only that they are completely invulnerable to Dark Ether's atmosphere and thus are able to live under such harsh conditions, even if they are being possessed. But the Space Pirates weren't the only ones that tampered with Metroid genes, since the Galactic Federation actually was involved in the creation of the Unfreezeable Metroids that could be found in the bottle ship. There, these Metroids were modified to resist cold temperatures, to maximize their potential as bioweapons. Additionally, their membrane pigmentation shifted from green to blue and their nucleus turned from red to purple. Additionally, there's one type of Metroid that doesn't really classify as one, but that needs to be covered here nonetheless, and that is the Xenomorph. The Xenomorphs are holographic creatures that could only be found in the demo for Metroid Prime Hunters, which makes their canonicity questionable. They can take one of 4 different appearances: Mocktroids, Tallon Metroids, Summers, and even Samus herself. But what we're interested in are these first 2, Mocktroids and Tallon Metroids. Tallon Metroid Xenomorphs work as you'd expect them to. They get close to you and try to drain your energy. But Mocktroid Xenomorphs work a bit differently. Since Mocktroids are unable to drain energy like their counterparts, they will simply float around and try to deal damage by making contact. And finally, we have the last Metroid, Samus herself. After being infected by the eggs, Samus was injected with a vaccine developed from the baby Metroid's DNA, allowing Samus to gain an immunity over the eggs parasites, but making her share traits with the species such as the weakness to cold. In Metroid Dread, we even see her reach her fullest potential so far, since she was able to absorb the energy out of both Ravenbeak and his ship together, obtaining the Hyper Beam in the process. We don't know the full extent of Samus's Metroid power, but seeing her in action, it's pretty clear that she has become extremely powerful, being able to withstand and utilize great amounts of energy in her favor before collapsing. But no matter what abilities she may possess, we will most definitely see more of her powers in future entries. And there you have it, every Metroid ever. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video, and if you want to see something in particular in the channel, let me know down in the comments below. I always read them, and they help me find motivation to continue posting videos like this. But for now, I've been Ambercore, and it's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you.